And welcome to Who Review, which in this week probably won't be. I mean, the review will be 20 minutes, but I doubt the episode will be because we have some other bits to get to first, which is always fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a lighter thing, and then a serious thing. But let's start with the lighter thing, Chris, because otherwise it's going to be really weird. What's the?
Yeah.
Go on. You had something you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, just to clarify, because there was a comment on last week's episode, which I thought, fair point, which was the Ponderer. I believe that's the correct username.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies if I've missed that.
Yes.
Missed anything off the name.
Ponderer also worth adding, a YouTuber in their own right, and a sayer of smart things. If anyone is interested, they usually comment under our videos. Feel free to click on their channel and watch some of their videos. I'm sure they've. Yeah. I've not looked recently, but I bet I would put money on there being at some point content on this very season of Doctor Who. So if you're listening to this, you might enjoy that.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out. Just confusion on me describing the Fugitive Doctor stuff as a fourth wall break. So I think I probably phrased it wrong. So I think it in many ways did break the fourth wall, specifically the line about perhaps that story will be finished one day. I just can't personally make that sentence make sense in the context of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
It to me personally,
it's
just felt like Russell saying it for the audience, mm-hmm. which to my mind made it a fourth wall break because, for me it just absolutely points to, hey, we might get round to finishing that. You never know.
Yeah,
because
what could that possibly mean in the context of the episode? Like, what does she mean? Exactly. Like, the Doctor, her story's been told, presumably. She's Ncuti now. She's the 15th Doctor now. So
yeah, and also,
so what story has to be told? What does she mean?
Even if, because obviously, I think my interpretation may just be my interpretation is that we're seeing the Fugitive Doctor because, in the eye of the person they're talking to. Yeah. She's seeing the Fugitive Doctor because she had the adventure with the Fugitive Doctor. So in that case, even she knows that story. She was there.
Yeah. So why she's aware? Yeah, that's the story that will be. But even weirder, it's Ncuti saying it. So he's talking to someone who knows the story. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. I wouldn't necessarily. It's tricky with the phrasing because it's such a weird type of fourth wall break. I think I described it as being metatextual.
That's better. That's a better phrasing for it. For sure.
So it's outside of the context of the show. It's kind of talking to the audience, which is it's metagaming in Dungeons and Dragons. It's chat that the character of information the characters or things that the characters shouldn't be saying, and it's more to do with the game than it is to do with the story being told. And I agree with you. I fourth wall break. We could debate the semantics of that phrasing if we want, but I mean, just in general, though, I did also feel that it was aimed at the audience very directly. So yeah, I had the same concern with that line. It's just more of a clarifying than it is a.
Yeah, absolutely. Just clarifying what I meant by that. So yeah, that's what I was referring to there.
When you do a podcast like this, sometimes you're just talking, and you sort of like you don't like you go back to it. You go, oh yeah, I could have phrased that better, or I could have said that better. I mean, these are not scripted, so it's like we sometimes don't always express ourselves in the most eloquent way, and we sort of have to come back with our tail between our legs. I said it wrong. I meant this, really. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about Dan's impression, seemingly.
Well, no, that's of either of us on any occasion when we've had to come back with our tail between our legs. I've had to do it as well. I remember having to do it multiple times on Steven University, so let's not... That was almost more of an impression of me than it was of you.
I love how everyone's thinking, though, you apologise for misspeaking in this instance, but you're not apologising for pronouncing every person ever's name wrong. No, I'm not.
Yeah, Chris, he'll never do that. Very quickly then, on to the more serious thing, because there's something we need to get out of the way and address before we can review this episode in a way that is constructive. Obviously, there are clear real-world parallels in this episode to the situation with Israel and Palestine. Now, they aren't one-to-one, and I think trying to apply one to the other is both muddles up this episode's message and is reductive of a real-world event that's happening, right? I don't believe... it's going to have that much bearing on the TV show we're reviewing. But I do feel like it's important that we address it also, because it's obviously a really serious thing that's happening. And I do believe, I don't know this, but I believe that the comparison was intentional. And I think it would be disrespectful to the writer to not acknowledge their acknowledgement of a thing that's happening. So very quickly, before we get to our light review of the silly little sci-fi show that we love, I will say this. I do not believe anyone's beliefs are worth more than the lives of thousands of innocent people and children. I believe there is a genocide happening right now in Gaza. And if this episode of Doctor Who and its discourse has brought your attention to that situation, I think that is a good thing. On the whole. Does this episode in some way add to the conversation in any sort of constructive way? No, it does not. No, it does not. It just draws a sort of parallel that kind of collapses if you really try to make it work, right? So, I would say if this has piqued your interest, or if this has started discourse around you of a topic you're not that familiar with, please go do some research. Go look into it. Find out where you stand on this issue. Check several sources from different places. Have a guess at their biases, and then make a decision for yourself about how you feel about this. The episode doesn't really end up taking a stance because of the fact that it's a fictionalized situation that doesn't quite compare to the real one. So I wanted to address it because I think a lot of people want to talk about that and are talking about that, and I actually think that's a really good thing. And
I hope people could understand why we've done this before, because it's like Dan's just said, it's a good thing that it's encouraging people to discuss that, and therefore rushing that point in a 20-minute, like the premise of this podcast is, can we review Doctor Who in 20 minutes? Didn't seem quite right to try and cram that message in as part.
Or
of that.
try to analyse that.
Come on, Dan.
With a 10-minute,
with
a 20-minute
timer. Let's get back to talking about whether Rylan can act.
It would have been a very reductive way to do it, and I believe that issue requires more thought and time and care than we would be willing to, and able to give it in this particular format. But I did also want to address it because, as I said, Juno Dawson and Russell T. Davies, who presumably did rewrites on this episode, it's not an accident. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's pretty close. I don't think it's an accident. I think their stance became kind of clear watching this personally, but hey, that's people can debate that too. Anyway, that's a thing. I have to come out. I have to now brace myself for people yelling at me because I have come out anti-genocide. It's crazy. We live in a weird world, don't we? Where I don't think murdering people's good, and people will be like, "That's offensive." What a weird world we live in. That happens every time it comes up, and I'm always just confused by that response. But anyway.
Yes,
all right,
it's a mad time. But what's even badder is just as much anger at liking the Timeless Children or whatever. Not that you or I did like the Timeless Children particularly, but if we did, it's mad that those two things seem to somehow require the same amount of
internet
response.
Anger is always at 100, and that is the only level it exists at. And you are just as angry about a genocide as you are about whether Superman should be wearing his red trunks or not. Because everything is pitched at the same level on the internet, and it's crazy.
Was he? I didn't notice in that trip. Was he? Or was he not wearing?
He's got
his
the red trunks.
then?
He's got the red trunks. They went
Right,
red
okay.
trunks. Yeah, it was a very look. I have no horse in the red trunks race, Chris. But I will say this: I wanted him to have red trunks because I knew it would piss off all the Snyder fans. I just want the suit to look good, right? And if the suit looks good without the trunks or with the trunks, whatever, I'll take the suit. The suit's the suit. Does it look like Superman? Has it got the right colour scheme? I'm happy. You change the bells and whistles and adjust the design elements. Don't give a shit. Big cape, short cape. Don't care. If it looks good, it looks good. That's all I care about, right?
But I also think surely it's much better, regardless of where you stand on Snyder's take.
Yeah.
Surely in a world where they're rebooting, it is better to have a completely fresh take.
Yeah.
Either, do you know what I mean? So so say there's no red pants and there's no super dog and there's no sort of Technicolor. Well then, surely as a Snyder fan, you're even more annoyed because you're going, well, if this is what you wanted, why didn't you just go to Snyder? Like, so yeah, very bizarre.
Very bizarre.
Anyway.
But like, it's but we are now in danger of actually discussing the Red Trunks more than the serious thing. So, serious thing behind us. Onto the episode. I've got my timer up, Chris. We've probably killed a good 10 minutes prior to this start, but. So this is going to be like a 30-plus minute episode of our 20-minute review, but there you go. So the timer starts now. There we go. So, Chris, how did we feel having watched Interstellar Space Song Contest thing? That's not what it's called.
Yeah. So first of all, because I feel slightly bad for Ryland being my example just a minute ago. I think Ryland's great at this. Like Ryland's job in this is brilliant because essentially he's presenting more than he is acting, and he's a very good presenter. So he does
get to do some acting too, and I thought he was pretty good. Yeah. I found him. You know what? Yeah. I was dubious about him being in this episode, but I found him pretty charming as it goes, and found him quite likable, and thought it was a pretty good performance. But he didn't have a big monologue. He didn't have a big dramatic speech. He didn't have a lot to do in terms of serious acting. But for the role he did have, I thought he nailed it.
Yeah,
good work, Ryland.
Yeah, never doubted him. I like Ryland a lot. Listen to his off-menu episode if you want an entertaining hour or two. Apart from one element which I really didn't like, on the whole, I really loved and enjoyed this episode. I thought the visuals of everyone going out into space, especially the wide shot, were just absolutely stunning.
Just the most upsetting imagery in Doctor Who in a long time. Really, really affecting, like horrible.
Until the end of the episode for different reasons. But
it's everybody lives, I guess. Like, I don't know, whatever, fine. I don't know.
Oh no, I meant more. I'd argue there was some fairly upsetting imagery later in the episode as well. But we'll get to it.
Sure. I might not be. Oh yeah. Of course, yeah. The thing that is my biggest problem with this episode.
Well, I assume we've got the same biggest problem.
Yeah.
We haven't actually talked about it, but I make that assumption.
Yeah.
Especially the wide shot of them all floating into space, brutal. Just horrific. So powerful. Absolutely so brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was incredibly well done. Thought, all the side characters were fun and interesting. Mike and Gary's reaction, when he blew up the robots' heads, and he's like, "I like you," and they're like, "We're glad." I thought that was really funny.
They were a good inclusion. I think. Like it's sometimes you just don't want the Doctor talking to himself, but you also don't want to give him characters that are too complex that you need to spend loads of time setting up and giving motivations. So they're a perfect middle ground where it's they're clearly just comic relief, but it's still someone for the Doctor to sort of talk at as he's thinking through the problem, and it's perfect because they don't take up too much time, and the time they do take up, they're being funny, so you sort of you get value out of them.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that it was, again, a good ABC storyline. Wasn't too convoluted. Despite the fact that it was doing quite a lot, it still managed to also be a celebration of Eurovision, which I was not expecting. But sort of that last montage to making your mind up, and then unfreezing everyone in record speed, given the volume of people they had to unfreeze.
It's 100,000 people. I worked this out. If they did it, if everyone took 10 seconds to unfreeze, it would have taken them 7 days.
Yeah, certainly long enough for that kid to have been arrested and taken away instead of just sat there watching. But actually that's a quibble. But I thought it was paced well. I thought it was all very effective. Really, really enjoyed it. And actually a great example of an episode living up to the promise of the season. I talked last week about how, I think I said it on the podcast and not just to you individually, but about how the whole thing this series was, we can't keep going to Earth this time, and they found reasons to go to Earth, but this is it felt expansive. It felt it was, essentially in some ways, Space Station Under Siege, but it felt so different to that format and what it is usually in Doctor Who. I really, really loved those elements of it. The big two, well, for me, in my opinion, so the big three, for me, knock two of them off right away. Personally, we'll see what Dan thinks in a minute. Susan and the Rani reveal, obviously predicting the Rani, so we weren't that surprised by it. I can't really judge my feelings on either of those two until I see them in further execution. What they do next with those reveals, for me, is what's key. I don't mind it being the Rani at all. I think that is potentially very interesting because, as I've said previously, I can't remember where, but I'm pretty sure I said it on a Who review, I actually think the Rani is an interesting character. The core conceit of that character, a scientist that's going to put the experiment above everything else and doesn't care who they have to destroy to make that happen, I think that's a great conceit for a villain. And as long as they're having the Rani do that and be that, and not just going, oh, well, we can't use the Master again, so let's use the Rani.
A female Master.
Exactly. Yeah, as long as they're using that premise, and as long as they explain what Mrs. Flood has been doing for the last 2 seasons, as long as they sort of retrospectively go
they kind
back
of have.
and do that.
They kind of have in this episode because she said, have you got all the readings? So she's been following the Doctor, getting the same readings so they can go to the same place he's going.
Right, okay, fine.
Not ideal,
yeah,
not perfect,
okay,
but a workable explanation.
And I quite liked the idea of the Rani having such a different personality to the Doctor that, when there's another one, immediately the former Rani is suddenly like bowing to the new one. I thought that was quite an interesting dynamic. Great to see Caroline Ford back as Susan, obviously. But again, I want them to do something with that. My big complaint, personally, I've talked for a while, but I feel like we have the same one, so I might as well launch into it, and then you can say the things you really liked. The Doctor physically torturing someone felt so unbelievably out of character to me. I have thought about it a lot since. I don't think they justified it. I don't think, there's ice in his heart, and the comparison to it reminded them of Gallifrey being gone, and I just don't think that worked or justified it, especially in a world where he'd already saved all those people before the event happened. So thanks to his actions playing with the thing, even if he thought Belinda was still up there at that point, he didn't think she was dead. He thought she was frozen in status. And he'd captured the villain at this point. Like, he's not torturing him to capture him. It is pure vengeance. And vengeance isn't a word you fucking associate with the Doctor usually. And, I understand, because you can... And I've thought about it, and I guess someone could make the argument of, how he treats the family of blood is quite firm. But that's the equivalent of, alien prison. This kid is going to a form of prison. He's not torturing him for... He's not... he's needlessly beating him up, essentially, basically. And that, I don't think they did enough to justify that, and I'm not sure you ever really could justify the character that the Doctor is doing that, and I really didn't like that element of it. And I think it was quite disturbing imagery, which is what I was referring to earlier. Yeah. So, yeah. What did you think?
I agree. I think it's going to be very hard. I do think a little bit slightly half falls into the category of the Rani and Susan, where, interesting, do something with it next week. The payoff has to be worth this, and I agree with your comments on that. Very excited that Susan's back. What does it mean? What were those interjections? We're hopefully going to explain all that, and I'll have feelings on that once we do. Same with the Rani, very interesting character, but we have no idea which version of this she is yet. My theory is that the Mrs. Flood we were seeing in season 1 was actually after this Mrs. Flood. So I think that's her version of David Tennant's 14th Doctor going to the garden with Catherine Tate's family. She just ends up living next to Ruby. So I think her living next to Ruby is actually like her future. That's just where she goes to go away. And all the stuff this season has been her following the Doctor around trying to track to get to that date. But we'll see. Who knows? But either way, yeah, both those, well, I'll get more on next week. In terms of the torture element, I 100% agree with you. I don't think there's really ever going to be a good enough thing to justify the Doctor doing that. As you said, it was completely needless violence, spite, vengeance, all of those things. The episode tried to. It did a couple of things. It had the whole, you've put ice in my heart, and I've never felt that before. Like, this is new. I'm angry. I'm angry in a way I've never been before. And obviously then we did the thing at the end where Belinda says, you scared me. And he says, I scared myself. And I'm thinking, maybe we're going to address that more in the finale. This dark heart that's appeared. And if we do that, point for doo-doo, for saying doo-doo. If we do that, then that I reserve the right to shift my judgment if they do justify it somehow. I don't think they will be able to, which is why I feel so strongly about it. But I also am not sure that story is complete yet, because I think we've been slowly building to something regarding that, because he had a similarly spiteful speech to that guy in the Ruby episode as well. Conrad, thank you. Yeah, so I'm wondering if we're intentionally doing an arc. Will it work? Will it be justified? Will I feel like they earned it in the end? Probably not, but I feel like they have the right to be given a chance to justify that. So then in terms of the rest of the episode, like I thought it was, like you thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a really fun sort of rompy episode in many ways, which is weird because there was also a lot of really dark stuff in it. I thought it didn't feel rushed, which is weird because when you describe all of the things that are in this episode, it's a massive list of things. Susan, the Rani, the Eurovision, the backstory of that, the song at the end, the montage of getting everyone out of the crowd. Like, if you describe all of the things that happened to the episode to me, I'd be like, there's no way that's 40 odd minutes of TV and it still feels coherent. But I shrug. A lot of people saying Juno Dawson should be our next showrunner, and you know what? I'm not against it. I thought this is a really well-paced episode, which has been a problem throughout this series, and I was relieved to see that was not such an issue here. So yeah. I mean, look, it's. Oh, I wrote the lines down. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go. If your cold, filthy heart just likes to kill, is one of the things he was saying to the villain while he was electrocuting him, which felt horrendous. That ice you put in my heart, I think it'll be there forever now, is an interesting line. And then the counter argument to the thing I just said, by the way, I wrote this down, I forgot about this in my notes. If we are doing, I hate that I've gone back to something I'd already moved away from, but I've remembered some extra bits. If we are doing a conclusion to the Doctor's new personality of being meaner and stuff later on, maybe don't have Belinda seem really scared by his actions and then be like, have I ever told you you're wonderful? Like 5 minutes later. Sort of undercuts it. I think if we really wanted to play this up, she should have been a bit afraid of him. And been clearly a bit afraid of him. Not just saying that in one sentence where she goes, you frightened me back there. She should be afraid of him now, still. Because he was a vengeful god in that moment, and that is not a good look. So yeah. We got 6.5 minutes left. We both spoke for a good while. Any other... Oh yeah, Graham Norton was great in this. Love Graham Norton. And he's got a really interesting history with Doctor Who. I love that he's finally been in the show, having sort of photobombed it twice, unintentionally.
It's so good, so good.
I just love that Graham Norton finally got to turn up.
One thing neither of us have talked about, I'll throw it as a question to you, because I don't really know my opinion in some ways. I don't know if I have an opinion, which maybe is an answer to the question, but the villain, what did you think of Kid? What did you think of how they were portrayed? Did they justify their motivations? All that sort of stuff.
Well, I don't think they justified their motivations, but that was the point. The point was that they'd such a horrendous thing had happened to them that they were doing a horrendous thing back, and it was. I think the point the episode was trying to make was about cycles of violence, The problem is that cycles of violence is a really hard concept to explore in a way that is thorough, or in a way that, you know, you're saying something about it. And in the end, it was just sort of part of the text of the episode rather than like a really interesting look at that. I mean, and this is especially true right now because I am in the midst of season 2 of The Last of Us, and you know, the Last of Us Part 2 as a game is a game about cycles of violence and how one violent act begets another, and if we keep chasing vengeance, you know, are we any better? You know, is one act of mass murder justification for another? Absolutely not. But like, you know, this episode tries to explore that idea, but it just doesn't really, though, in the end, because it's a Doctor Who episode and it's got 45 minutes and there's a lot of, you know, fun nonsense going on. So it's like, how do you tackle such a complex issue with that amount of time? You what ends up happening is you don't really. You just sort of, it's just sort of there as part of the tapestry that is this episode. And not a complaint. I mean, it's as interesting a motivation as any other you could have given him, and obviously that motivation is linked, as I mentioned earlier, to some of the real world parallels. You know, so that's because, you know, that I mean, what's been happening in Gaza between Israel and Palestine has been a cycle of violence that's been going on for a very large amount of time. So, look, I'll put it this way: it didn't start 2 years ago. For anyone who feels like it maybe did. So I think that's, you know, I think the episode handled that as well as it was going to without properly actually exploring it, which is disappointing. But, you know, it made for a perfectly interesting villain for the episode, you know. And I also liked what we brought back, the Delta Wave as a premise. The idea of using a Delta Wave and putting it through a TV station. Because we did Delta Wave in Smith and Jones. Was that the last time we did a Delta Wave? As a potential threat that was going to kill bajillions of people? She was going to use it. She was going to turn the hospital
possibly
into a Delta Wave using the X-ray machine, and that was going to wipe out all life on Earth or something.
Maybe. Can't remember.
Yeah, not the first time we've used that. So yeah, we got 3 minutes left, Chris.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's very fair. I think whilst the twist of the other singer also being from the same place wasn't that surprising. It was actually, you know, executed well and you know, made the story unfold quite you know, but was part of that pacing and the strong unfolding of the story. I will pay, because I paid a criticism a few episodes ago, I think Robot Revolution, to Murray Gold. I will say Murray Gold was on fire here.
He
I
was.
think, you know, all the songs,
all
the music in general.
The music when the Doctor woke up
Yeah.
and used the confetti cannon, like, brilliant.
Oh my god,
So
yeah,
good.
brilliant.
Yeah, that was a proper
Absolutely
classic Murray Gold
fantastic.
knocking it out the park moment.
Yeah, and I think he did all the Eurovision songs as well, and did a great job on those. Again, they felt like intergalactic Eurovision songs.
They did.
Which, you know, it's not necessarily an easy brief. So I thought Murray Gold was on fire. I thought he did a really, really great job.
Yeah.
I loved the confetti cannon bit.
Me too. Dumb but
was
fun.
great.
Perfect dumb Doctor Who fun. Very quickly, actually, I should clarify. I just want to tag something you said right at the beginning that then we got because obviously you sort of did your episode review and it was right at the top of yours and I forgot to come back to it. On the Rani and the lack of surprise. Look, when you predict every single female character with a mysterious past is the Rani for 20 years, you're eventually going to get it right. I don't think anyone who predicted this would be the Rani should feel too proud of themselves.
Yeah, and I include us within that.
I'm very much referring to us. We called it, but we've, you know, how many times have people predicted the Rani being the mysterious female character over the last few
and I
years?
feel a bit bad because someone I think it was Mr. TARDIS, who I adore. I think Mr. TARDIS is great. But I think it was him or someone said in their review of this, or in something I saw about this, so she's the least interesting thing she could be. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think that's partly because everyone's been predicting her for every female character the show's had for 20 years. She could still be very interesting, especially if they stick to the core conceit of the character.
It's too early to say that. It's just too early to say that.
Yeah. So I don't think it's the show's fault that
45
she's
seconds
been
left.
guessed. And Russell T Davies even said it in a clip I saw. He was like, ever since Mrs. Flood first appeared, people guessed Arani, and sometimes you just give people what they want. So
It's fair. All right, we've got 30 seconds. A little wrap up. Look, this is one of the better episodes of the season. Definitely in the top half.
Yep,
super fun with that one story element that we didn't like, potentially still to be addressed in the finale. I thought it was a perfectly good setup. Very Utopia. An episode with its own plot that introduced us to the villain that ended with a regeneration that's going to introduce us to the villain for the next thing. There you go. What do you think, Chris? You got 10 seconds.
More turn left than Utopia, I would say. Utopia very much felt like part one of a trilogy, whereas I think Turn Left felt like a lead-in episode. But I agree. I thought it was brilliant episode.
It's interesting, that, isn't it? Because I do feel like it's more Utopia just because it specifically ends with that sort of character that was in that episode regenerating into the villain for the subsequent one. But
yes, that's fair.
Yeah. But maybe actually as a whole episode though, Utopia was much more of a setup for what followed, whereas the storyline was its own thing. So yeah. Anyway, good episode. Very much enjoyed it. Looking forward to the finale. We're slightly over our 20 minutes here, so thanks everyone for listening. It's been a bit of a longer one because of all of the preamble. We hit 30 in the end this week, but that's okay.
Fuck it. Just quickly, it's not episode review, just quickly. Any finale predictions, Dan? I know it's a two-parter and we're only about to see part one. But...
I think we're going to see multi-doctors. I think there's another doctor coming back.
Really?
Yeah, I smell it in the air. I think it's one of those things where if Shooty's regenerating, right, and Russell has been sort of obsessed with this idea of doctors sort of handing the baton over, and we're not going to do bi-generation this time. I don't think we are. I think that maybe Shooty's doctor says goodbye with another doctor holding his hand. Not literally, but figuratively. It just thematically makes sense to me. Who? Who knows? I doubt we're bringing Tennant back. 13 feels like a reasonable shout. I couldn't see 12 doing it. I could see 11 doing it. So if it is going to happen, it'll be Smith or Jodie, I reckon.
Okay. Well, there's... Okay. I won't... There's been a rumor of something that might lend itself to that, but I won't say on air because this isn't a This isn't
what's funny?
Thing,
I actually all of the rumors that I heard this year that sort of spoiled elements of the series are out there now, because I did a couple of weeks ago hear chatter about the Rani, but you never know with this stuff because like everyone's been predicting the Rani forever. And I did get the rumor about Midnight being a sequel before I saw it. And then, of course, this week, once Russell and June Dawson posted stuff on Friday saying, maybe watch this one as soon as you can and avoid the internet, everyone went, okay, we're revealing Mrs. Flood. So, I've gone into quite a few episodes with, or a handful of episodes, I should say, with some knowledge beyond what I should have. But for the finale, other than that, I expect, I don't know if this is a rumor or just what people expect, but I assume Conrad's involved in whatever's going on in the finale.
Well, the weird thing about that one is they, for a show that hasn't really trailered much, RTD released an image. Sorry, I suppose I'm breaking my rumor spoilers, but it's on his Instagram. RTD released an image of the two Rani stood next to Conrad.
Oh, did he? There you go. So I saw chatter about that and couldn't even differentiate if it was rumor or just speculation. But so I don't have a lot going into this. I do believe Shooty's regenerating though. I do think that's happening. Whether we're getting a new Doctor reveal or we're getting a sort of more generic, he goes in and the glow happens, I don't know. But I think we're doing. I think we're doing that, and I think maybe we're doing that because he's real. Maybe he realizes that he's too vengeful and he needs to change. Maybe that's how we're going to do this. Maybe we're going to do that. Maybe that's what this is all leading to.
Maybe I just because I agree with you. If anything, I want to make the opposite prediction, just in the hope that wills it into reality. Because I just want more Shooty. Like I think Shooty deserves so much more than just a two limited run series.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it
also,
you that told me
I
that
think
he's done the equivalent of episodes? If it was Tennant's run, he's done the equivalent of episodes of Up to Gridlock.
Oh God, no, that wasn't me, but that's depressing.
I saw that online then, I guess. So, like, if you mapped 1-to-1 episodes of Shooty across Tennant's time, his finale would be Gridlock.
That's mad. And I think the other reason is, and I think this was a discussion we had off air, but the other reason it's so heartbreaking is because it very much is seemingly because, and not necessarily if it was the Disney, because basically it's not been worked out what is happening enough, and he's had offers, he's a busy man, etc., and that's why he's walked away. But fundamentally, he said on Graham Norton, we should start filming Series 3 early next year, or whatever he said got cut.
I forgot about that.
And we also know there were reshoots, which is where a lot of the theorizing is. A Regeneration was filmed on the reshoots.
Yeah,
now,
for me, once they confirmed they couldn't do the upcoming season in the summer because Disney hadn't renewed it yet and the money wasn't quite there, and that is probably the moment that
it certainly feels that way,
and that's when they.
It's certainly
yeah.
I mean, that's if you paint those pieces together, that's what you get. And I hate the fact that, and I don't. Can I just say, if that theorizing, and it is just theorizing, if that theorizing is correct, I don't particularly blame anyone. I don't particularly blame Disney. If their arrangement was always that they would commit after Series 2, fine. I don't particularly blame Russell. It was good to get more budget. This episode shows the value of more budget and a bigger audience. And sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. It makes sense to go for the Disney thing.
Yeah,
I don't blame Shooty either. He's.
Well, I was going to say, I will say as well, like, we've wanted even if we don't want Shooty to leave and we think it's too soon, we've wanted a regeneration that reveals the new Doctor in the episode pretty much since the early days. We've talked about that multiple times when over the years on Nothing But Static, on our Who review episodes. We've always said, wouldn't it be cool if they were able to keep it under wraps enough that on the day the episode airs, that's how we find out who the new Doctor is, because they regenerate into them in the episode. And now the circumstances that have potentially led to that happening are horrible. It's a tragedy that just sheer circumstances and practicalities have led to Shooty leaving earlier than he was intending. But that's still really exciting, no?
Yeah. So to I'll respond just to finish the point. I don't blame Shooty, but knowing at one point seemingly he was going to do more, it's heartbreaking to me that we're not going to get more with him.
Yeah. Sorry.
But to answer that's fine. But to answer your point, yes, assuming it doesn't get spoiled in the last 2 weeks, which we're not there yet.
Yeah, because that's the other thing as well. Like, and for those who aren't aware of this, sorry to potentially ruin your excitement. I don't believe we have yet had a Doctor reveal since Eccleston Tennant that has not been spoiled by betting websites. About 24 hours before.
Eccleston and Tennant was also announced to the press were going to spoil that. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's the reason I say that caveat, because I think that was sort of almost similar timeframes. Like Series 1 had definitely started airing when they had to announce Eccleston was leaving and Tennant was replacing. So yeah, there's very much the notion that it will get spoiled within the next 2 weeks if that is what we're getting. But
yeah, but that's the thing, is it's usually, unfortunately, with Matt Smith, Jodie, Peter, and I think even Shooty, the day before the official reveal, people in the know, because the closer you get to the reveal, the more people find out. You can't. Someone's got to take press pictures to release of the new Doctor. Someone's got to see and sign off on the footage. Someone's got, what I mean. There's just more and more people find out the closer to the day you get. And what happens is those people notice on betting websites, that there's pretty low odds on whoever it's going to be, and then they start betting on them. And when people start putting large amounts of money on a thing, it then goes up in the odds. So Matt Smith went from not even listed amongst the options, and as an unknown actor at the time, he suddenly shot to the top of the ratings, the betting odds, and everyone went, that's suspicious. This guy we've never heard of is now at number one.
He was so unknown. Anyone that put a bet on him in those 2 days shouldn't have got the money. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. So I genuinely think and I know obviously we're talking about bookies playing like, do you know what I mean? Whatever, but like, come on, you're not making that bet unless no one happened to watch Party Animals that weekend and went, oh, he'll be the next Doctor, I'll put a bet on that.
Yeah. So, but this has happened every time. It happened with Peter Capaldi as well, about 24, 48 hours before he shot to the top. Unfortunately, if there is a new Doctor, we may very well find out ahead of time through that means. And that sucks, but hey-ho. So, stick your fingers in your ears, say la 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 la, close your eyes, and do that for the next week. Then open them, watch the episode, then do it again for another week, and then we'll be there. I'll tell you what, though, I am now tempted, knowing it's a simulcast, I am now tempted by seeing the finale in cinema.
Yeah, I know. I feel burnt from the Day of the Doctor and how much dingier it was in 3D. I know this wouldn't be 3D. I know this makes no difference.
Oh, we had a great time, though. I loved watching that episode.
Yeah, I know.
The 3D was the only problem. The 3D was the only problem. So I would be potentially be looking to, I'm considering it. I wasn't going to, but now I'm thinking about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'll add a prediction then, and then we'll go. My prediction is, even though the cinema screening, for example, is the 2 episodes, my prediction is the next week's episode will feel more like a separate episode than it did last year. There you go.
That's an interesting prediction. Is that just you think they're going to go different, or are you sensing a story beat that's going to divide them?
I think that it's the title. I think this next episode might literally be set on something or during something called Wish World, and then the next episode will go wider beyond that. And it's in the post, Russell T Davies said that even though there's 3 of them, the Rani's only counted as 1. So the Holy Trilogy Unholy Trilogy wasn't complete, suggesting to me they will call upon another entity at the end of the next episode, and therefore the finale will be about them, potentially.
Oh, God, it's going to be Resillion or Omega or some other fucking Time Lord bullshit.
If you want me to go further, my money would, yes, the 2 of them, but my money would be on Omega, I think.
God damn it, that's so predictable.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Which again is why I'm like, just do something with the Rani. But now we are going back on review, so yes. There we go. We've cheated a bit, but
we cheated a lot. We cheated a lot. This episode is 45 minutes long. We really can't. But yeah. Anyway, well, I hope people found it interesting. At least some wider Who chat amongst the review. Hey, we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'm enjoying.
If we're gonna do it though, speculation before the finale is the time to do it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. So yeah. Oh God, it's definitely going to be Omega.
I mean, it really will be.
I hate that. It's like at the beginning of the season when we were like, who's Mrs. Floyd? Yeah, she's probably going to be the fucking Rani, isn't she? We're just resigned to the predictable answer. Oh, well. Look, yeah. Just because it's predictable doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. We've said that many a time on this podcast. So, with that all in mind, thank you all very much for listening.
Yes, because last year, what was the name of the Shikit or whatever? What was that?
Oh, Sutek.
Shutek. Last year, Shutek was arguably the predictable answer, and look at all the good they did with that. So, don't worry about Omega. It'll be fine.
To be fair, I don't think Sutek was as predictable as Rani and Omega.
No, I don't.
I think there were definitely people who were surprised by the Sutek reveal. Whereas I don't think many people at all were surprised by the Rani reveal. We didn't talk about it, by the way, and I know it's going back on review, but the actress playing the Rani seems really good, by the way. I think she had a real presence about her. I like her. She seems good.
Yeah, I thought she seemed brilliant. And I thought they did it really well. I mean, they had they had to stick with the rules they created with
costume.
14 and 15. But I just love, you might as well, we could have, I didn't predict it necessarily, a bi-generation, but you could have done, couldn't you? You'd been like, wow, she's wearing a lot of layers, coincidentally enough layers that everyone will still be very respectfully covered if they have to divide those clothes.
Hey, look, whatever you got to do, man. Whatever you got to do. I don't necessarily need a repeat of Shooty in his pants.
Oh no, I'm not. No, I'm not saying they should have repeated that. I just like I like because of that rule, which if you think
could
about
theoretically have worked
makes,
it out. Yeah.
Which if you think about it as well, though, makes no sense. Like logically, the clothes would rip. That's what would happen in a bi-generation. But not as irritating as them not fucking explaining how 14 changed his clothes whilst regenerating. But yeah, it just made me laugh, like looking back at that costume and how obviously it was designed to be split in two.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, we're very excited. I think I am more hopeful for this year's finale than I was last year's. I'll say that. I don't know if that is worth anything.
I'd agree.
But some big stuff happening in the world of Doctor Who. I love a good regeneration. So, and I'm predicting that to be the case. Although, I mean, we are talking very confidently like he's regenerating, and I guess we don't actually know that. So,
but again, I think we said this. I think we said this at the beginning. I think we said this on the first episode. Fucking hell, I'd love to be wrong.
Oh yes. Oh man. For anyone who thinks if he doesn't regenerate, we're gonna be sad. I'm gonna clarify right now. We'll not be sad. We'll be thrilled. We'll punch the air if that episode ends without
absolutely thrilled,
glowing gold coming out of Shooty's hands.
Yeah, I would be absolutely thrilled if that were the case.
Yeah. So there you go. Thanks everyone for listening. We're big fans of you.
Absolutely, we
supporting
are.
What we do by listening, liking, subscribing, commenting, sending us messages on. We got mail at nothingbutstatic is the email address. But feel free to comment on the YouTube post of this if you wish. If you're hearing this in several months' time, not several, about a month's time on our Nothing But Static feed, sorry, you missed out on all the speculation and discussion. You should have been subscribed to the YouTube channel and listened as it went, sucker.
Well, what's even worse is they'll have just heard a shitload of speculation that they A, know the answer to,
yes,
and B, are about to listen to us discuss.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway,
there's a world where the better edit of the Who review doesn't include this.
Yeah, but I'm a completionist, Chris.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I'm not gonna, I don't know if I can not include part of the discussion as it was. It's I'm preserving it for time. YouTube won't be forever.
Yeah. I think I think that listeners will know that all depends on whether Omega and another Doctor appear. If both of Dad's predictions are right, this shit's going in. If they're wrong, maybe it comes out.
Oh God, I hope it's Smith. Smith was missed at the 60th.
No, I would hate that. I would hate for Smith to be wasted on a cameo. If you bring Smith back, I want a full blown. I don't even want multi-Doctor. If you bring Smith back, do what you did with the 60th. Give me Amy, Rory, and Smith and River Song knocking about for an hour. Right.
Fair enough. So then, in that case, then you're just hoping it's 13. Then I guess.
I don't really have a view on the former Doctors. No, if I could hope for anything, I would want it to be all of them. All of them come back in some sort of, I don't know, void or whatever they did the Power of the Doctor in. Do that again. Have it be the modern Doctors.
All sort of stand round and walk him to the light or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I want any former Doctor to come back for... the only thing I can... If it's a full-blown multi-Doctor episode, then I'd quite like to see what Russell would do with 13, sure. But I...
I don't think it will.
Yeah,
be.
Could be anyone.
I think it's going to be at the end.
At this point, this is never going to happen, but I think the reality is at this point, because Tennant, the fan favourite, has come back so recently... If they're going to do multi-Doctor with anyone now, the white whale is, which I think is a term used, isn't it, for like rare, yes, the rare thing, is Eccleston. That's never going to happen. But
honestly, like genuinely, right? If Eccleston is in the finale, I'm giving it 10 out of 10, best episode ever, without any other comment. And we're just ending this podcast after 10 seconds.
Given that when asked what would it take for him to come back to the show, Eccleston's response was fire Russell T Davies. I don't think we're getting him. But
that's why I feel confident in saying if Eccleston appears with new footage, not just archive footage, in this episode, this finale, and appears and has a role that he's shot, we'll come on here, we'll start our 20-minute timer, and we will end it 10 seconds later after just saying best episode ever, and then just end it. That's what we'll do.
Can you imagine if Shooty regenerates into Eccleston?
It'd be amazing. Oh, we're just going to get these repeat doctors every other Doctor now. Just...
Hey, I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it.
Hey, look, if it gets me more Eccleston, always. I wouldn't even say no. You know what? I wouldn't even say no to a revisit of McGann. I think he deserves his crack at the whip.
I don't think there's anyone I wouldn't say no.
I would say no to Smith, and I would say no to Capaldi.
What, coming back and doing what they did? We really are. We really just have thrown the format out the window now. But doing what they did in the 60th?
Yeah, because so for Capaldi, it's because his Doctor was so complete by the end. You would only harm that Doctor by bringing him back. And for Smith, this is going to sound bad. He was I don't want to use the word phoning it in. He was on autopilot for his last season and a half, and I don't want more of that. I don't want more of that. I don't want him just to revert to that sort of like more generic version of his performance that he found as he went along. It happened to Tennant 2, by the way. Happened to Tennant 2. More prominently with Smith, I think. More in a way that more affected my enjoyment of the episodes. His performance by the end was just very predictable. Like he found a sort of rhythm he always delivered all of his lines in. Whereas when he first started in the role, he just made constantly interesting acting choices, like the way he would deliver certain lines. Like it was you never knew how he was going to say any given piece of dialogue, and that very much went away. He sort of found a rhythm that he liked, and then he sort of switched on autopilot and did that for his last year or two. I wouldn't want him to come back for that reason. I wouldn't want to see that.
Yeah, I think if you're choosing, the choices are either Eccleston just for the sheer like madness of it, and just for truly something we never thought we would see in a show where it's possible to see anything. To see Eccleston back would truly feel like that. Joe Martin, because the Fugitive Doctor and her as an actress deserves so much more. Whittaker just for...
We could do that. I hadn't even thought of that. Joe Martin's the one that sort of holds his hand and brings him to his end.
Yeah, that'd be good. But the trouble is, every time you bring the Fugitive Doctor back, you're like, oh, if you're going to keep bringing her back, could we just see her story? Or Whittaker, because it would be interesting to see Whittaker in the hands of another showrunner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
It's very
anyway.
Open. Bye. Bye. End it very slowly.
There we go. We ended abruptly, at least.